Look, I think the reality is that, over the generations, there's been a lot of practices in sport that on any test probably aren't really appropriate. And after the apology that was made in May 2021 by the Sports Commission Board, it was really important for us to actually go through the process properly, understand exactly the best way to approach restoration and re-engagement with those athletes who didn't have a great experience, and being able to announce the restorative program today is a very important next step. Obviously, there's plenty of work to continue to do to learn from and hear from those who haven't had a great experience, but we've got the mechanism in place now, which is wonderful.
What has that process looked like to get the apology last year to this day?
So we've done a lot of work engaging with other organisations who've gone down a similar path, who've been able to provide us with a lot of support in design and delivery. We've also engaged with all of our stakeholders from state and territories, games organisers, and all of our national sporting organisations partners as well, just to hear their feedback, understand some of the challenges that are likely to come up in the system as we go through this process, and also be really clear on how we provide feedback. So the things that we hear or learn, they will remain confidential unless the athlete involved wants us to take it further publicly. But we should also be in a position, and we will utilise it to learn, to make sure that the systems, processes and policies that are in place more broadly in the sporting sector do support a much better outcome for all athletes involved.
How were those three pillars in the program to support athletes that provide those best results?
So the first opportunity, of course, is to provide care and wellness support. Anybody that needs help can do that through mechanisms of ASB Heard, as well as our wellbeing programs. We'll also provide an opportunity for any of those who would like to speak to the ASC executives. So if there's anyone within the organisation they would like to tell their story to and work through their experiences, we'll provide that. And then there's also the opportunity for a restorative payment as well, which will be managed on a sliding scale based on the experience of the individual by a panel, including an independent representative, and we'll make sure then that those payments help those individuals move forward and re-engage with sport.
You mentioned Be Heard. How do the two programs work together?
So look, Be Heard has already been operating since we made the apology in 2021, and the great thing with that is it has opened up a dialogue with a lot of athletes who have experienced harm. The restorative program has had input in its design into some of that, but as well as looking at the broader ways of working in sport in Australia. It's one of the core design elements, for instance, in our community coaching program, where we took the lessons that have come through the stories in ASB Heard and utilised those. The important thing about the ASB Heard program now, of course, is that even though we have the restorative program in place, it's still available for those athletes who don't necessarily fall into the restorative program itself. We had about 9,000 athletes. Thank you. We had about 9,000 athlete scholarship holders run through the program between 1981 and 2013, which is what the restorative program is designed to look after. But of course, we acknowledge and recognise that there have been many other athletes who have been here over those periods of times in camps-based programs or other activities, and ASB Heard continues to provide an important support mechanism for those athletes.
What would some of those 9,000 athletes have been part of the system?
Oh, look, the number of input sessions that we had really did focus actually a lot on the way the engagements to occur. I think for those athletes who have felt that they have been harmed, acknowledging confidentiality, being given the opportunity to tell their experience without it being an investigation. One of the core tenets of a restorative program is there is no investigation of fault or blame. It's an acknowledgement that there has been an incident. And the approach of a conversation based on that acknowledgement is very different to what the other mechanisms that might be in place if we were investigating things that have occurred. So certainly understanding how you make that engagement, how the conversations to occur, the confidential nature of it, as well as those feedback mechanisms to the sport system more broadly, because we also acknowledge that in going down the path of doing this program, the sports that existed here where scholarship holders did operate, those sports operate at an NSO level nationally, and the athletes that were part of our programs are also part of and were part of those sports, and there is a linkage there to make sure that we're hearing the stories and learning from them.
How do you feedback today since the announcement from past athletes that might be able to choose the program?
Look, the feedback has been positive so far that it's the right step to take, and in fact I'm quite encouraged that yesterday when the communications went out directly to those scholarship holders that we can contact, the phone started ringing straight away. So that simple early engagement and recognition that there was questions and people wanted to talk to us about it, I think was proof enough that this was the right thing to do.
Have any idea how many of the non-ASC athletes will be able to be likely to pursue it?
Look, at this point, no. I think what we've learned from some of the other programs that places like Defence have done is that it tends to be a little bit of a slow burn to start with. And as people build confidence in the stories around the fact that the program is managing the individual's cases well, then that encourages more over time to come forward. But honestly, we at this point don't have any idea. We're open and we'll wait.
On a personal note, how important is it to you that Australians will go forward and correct some of the wrongs of the past 20 years?
Look, for me personally, it's incredibly important. I was never a scholarship holder, but I was an athlete who came here. I was an athlete who was involved in the sports system for a long period of time, and moving forward to being a parent whose children were involved in sport. There's so many elements of the way that we engage young people in that environment that really on any modern test need to be adjusted and need to be supported. I personally have a very, very strong view that all young people that are involved in sport should finish their experience as happy, well-adjusted humans who are advocates for sport into the future. And when we have so many of our young people who come out of their sporting experience not wanting to ever be anywhere near it or involved with it again, we're failing, and the system needs to be better than that.
For the system now moving forward, is better to repeat its processes like today?
There is no doubt that sport in Australia has moved forward dramatically in the last decade, but probably really the last 3 to 5 years. As more of these stories have come out, as more of us have understood and acknowledged the impact of the practices that occurred in sport historically, it has enabled a conversation where we have seen great improvement. There's still a lot of work to do, I think, at the elite level, where we can easily wrap our arms around a lot of that. Progress is being made at a good and rapid pace, and sports are doing generally a good job at acknowledging their role in supporting athletes through their experiences. But I would say we've still got an enormous amount of work to do, and especially at the broader community and club level where, it's harder to get directly involved in education. There's a lot more volunteerism and a lot more people who really are just replicating the experiences that they grew up with because they don't know a better way to do it. And we're working very hard to help support all sports at all levels nationally to address that. So our responsibility at the AIS was for those scholarship holders who were directly in our care. We had over 9,000 athletes from 1981 to 2013 who were brought from their home environments to permanently live here and be a part of our programs. And so the restorative program is very much directed towards those athletes who we had full responsibility to manage their health and well-being. For those athletes who weren't scholarship holders but did come here and feel that they were involved in inappropriate behaviours or programs, there are still mechanisms that they're able to come to us and receive support and well-being support, as well as tell their stories through ASC Be Heard. But the restorative program is directed towards those scholarship holders.
And what about state-based institutions? Should they follow the lead of the ASC and introduce their own team?
I think all organisations across the country that are involved institutionally in supporting young people have really, since the Royal Commission, gone through a lot of soul searching and understanding about what's happening and what they need to do to ensure that they provide the right environment. And I have no doubt that as time goes on, we'll see more and more examples of organisations that want to go through a restorative program in all of the forms that might occur. But it will be up to those individual institutions to decide on the best path forward for them.
And is this a compensation scheme? If not, can you explain what's in there?
This isn't a compensation scheme. There is no legal liability or acceptance of fault in this program. There is an acknowledgement that harm has occurred, and it's a very different bar and judgment process that needs to be gone through. We won't be listening to athletes' stories and judging whether or not they received harm. We acknowledge that it's occurred. We want to hear their stories and give them the opportunity to be part of that restorative process. And so the payments are for restoration, they're not compensation. That at the moment is unknown. It will depend entirely on how many athletes at what level come through the program. It is funded by the ASC though, so we will be managing this out of our own reserves.